what kind of comes back to that trust piece is this engineer trusts Senseye. He knows that if Senseye says there's a problem to find. And he proceeded to kind of climb all over this motor roll gearbox assembly and right down to the depths of it, where he found the mounting bolts of the gearbox to be loose, 3 out of 4 of them. And if we didn't have that trust, you'd give up and say, it must be a false case from Senseye. The coupling's fine and the motor's fine. But having that trust and the drive to keep looking until we find the root cause has led us to tighten up 3 bolts and lead to a 12-hour downtime avoided, which 12 hours in any industry, in any plant is fantastic.
Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. I'm joined by Stewart McVinnie from BlueScope New Zealand, and BlueScope Steel New Zealand, in fact. And a lot of regular listeners will know we've spoken a lot to BlueScope Steel. I'm a very fantastic customer of Siemens and of the Senseye product. And we've spoken to Colin Robertson and Chris Watson very recently as part of our live event. You can check that out on the podcast now. But today we're talking about BlueScope New Zealand's very unique part of the story as well, and all of the success they've achieved so far and will achieve into the future as well, hopefully. We're going to focus on a particular success case and deep dive into that. Again, we did a similar one with Chris Watson of BlueScope as well recently. But before we go into that, Stuart, it'd be great to get a bit of an idea of your background and of BlueScope New Zealand as well, and where that fits into the overall picture of BlueScope. So over to you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Niall, and good to be here. And it is pretty cool to be able to share our Senseye journey and focus it around one of our recent success cases, because it is very successful and it's great to be able to share that. Just to kind of set the scene, I'm Stewart McVinnie, the Digital Transformation Manager here at New Zealand Steel, and we're a relatively new team. Digital transformation's been around, just gone 3 years now, primarily focused around what we're calling asset intelligence, of which Senseye is a really big part of, trying to better and get the most out of our manufacturing assets. To set the scene a little bit on us as New Zealand Steel, you mentioned already the term unique, and we are very unique down here at the bottom of the world. We are New Zealand's only steelmaker, and what makes us unique is our process. So we are a fully integrated steel business, which means we do everything from the raw materials all the way through to finished goods. But our raw materials are iron sands off our west coast beaches. So we have a unique process where we mine these iron sands and then process them through our iron making, steel making, and rolling mills to supply a large majority of New Zealand's domestic steel market. Been around since 1965. So we're pretty well set in this industry within New Zealand, and we have a pretty loyal bunch of customers with a pretty well-known product base across the country. And yes, we are a subsidiary of BlueScope Steel. So some of our colleagues that you'll have spoken to are part of the Australian business. We are New Zealand Steel under that BlueScope Steel umbrella.
Fantastic. And I guess before we go deep dive into the success case, Stu, it'd be interesting to know the story behind the implementation of Senseye. Of course, there's a global rollout at BlueScope Steel, but very specifically to New Zealand. So what led to the implementation?
Yeah, well, you mentioned that global rollout, and it was a really good use case. So they kind of set the scene about 6 to 12 months ahead of us kicking things off. But it was enough for our management kind of team to get a bit of a feel for what the opportunity was, to see some of the potential benefits, and then draw some of those similarities. We also have aging equipment. Some of our continuous improvement sort of methodologies were kind of flatlining in some of that growth. We are all faced with a changing workplace, and we're always looking for that modern approach for a step change in our asset performance. So that's where that decision came to create the digital transformation team and to then adopt asset intelligence, which Senseye is a big part of.
I see. So that's interesting, actually. So you formulated the team at that point to, I guess, manage the rollout of that particular project or other digital transformation initiatives as well? Or was the predictive maintenance one the trigger for it, let's say?
Yeah, well, we created the digital transformation team with a suite of modules envisaged to happen. We had some data work, we had some predictive maintenance. We're considering some things like digital twins and mobile workers. So there was a suite of modules that our asset intelligence program of work was envisaging working through. Be a big part of that, and one of the early things that got off the ground was the predictive working with Senseye.
Fantastic. And how long have you been using the system now? I guess just for context for the audience.
Yeah, we've been working with Senseye for probably the best part of 2 years now, but really only been using the tool in anger pretty much since Christmas. So that's about 6-7 months now, where we've had Senseye really providing value, implemented in production, and being used by our people.
And I guess, seeing success relatively soon is very positive, right? So the success we're talking about today, is obviously a great sign of the system's success and your success as well.
Oh, the early success has been fantastic for building our business case, right? To date, we've only got about 300 assets on board, and success for us probably is around 5,000. So to have had 4 wins in 6 months with 300 assets, I think it's an absolutely fantastic start and a real good demonstration of what the potential of this is when we hit that sort of target rollout of 3,000 to 5,000 assets.
And clearly, like I said, lots of room to grow there as well. So that's a really exciting part as well. Success already, but still lots of potential, right?
Totally. When you look at the 4 success cases for 300 assets, you do the maths, they're going to keep flowing in as we roll more and more out.
And I guess, so let's deep dive into the success we're talking about today. So it was actually, so Senseye actually detected elevated vibration in a gearbox, I believe. So as this is an example of early detection capability, how has it changed your maintenance practices sort of fundamentally as an example?
Maintenance practices wise, we're still pretty early in that journey. So 300 assets across our site is not a lot. So we've only just scratched the surface. So we haven't seen a big shift in those maintenance practices, but we're starting to see some small changes in the people working in those spaces. Moving from that reactive to proactive has been something we've observed already with just a few assets, where people are starting to spend less time in the mornings looking at trends on those assets onboarded and really just sit back and wait for Senseye to bring up a case. So that's freed up some more time in the morning where they'd normally be looking at assets. They're now just reviewing cases. So that's been a bit of a shift there. And the other small one around the kind of maintenance side of things is we have managed to eliminate some vibration analysis inspections. So where we've got Senseye monitoring an asset that a person was going out once a month to go and see how it's performing, we've now only a small amount, probably 90 hours worth of work, something like that. But we have managed to take a little bit of that work as we've onboarded assets into Senseye. So just early indications of what some of these opportunities are to address some of that maintenance planning.
Yeah, and that's really good examples of, like you said, even in sort of very early stages, sort of embracing the technology and trust, because, trust of the system, is key to sort of adoption and rollout. Was there sort of any particular initiatives you did with the maintenance teams to sort of encourage them to look at Senseye and use the information that's available through Senseye?
Oh, you nailed it with trust. Trust was everything, because we only had one chance to bring a lot of these people on board. And if you lose someone's trust early on, it's really hard to get it back. And then it's going to be a really tough sell to get Senseye moving forward from there. So we actually had a pretty robust pilot to start things off. And the idea with that pilot was to get all the learnings, to get everything polished up and tidied, to fix all the bugs and issues, so that when we went to production and rolled out, people had that trust because they weren't getting a product that wasn't fit for purpose. It also gave us that credibility and the confidence to go out with our sales pitch to our customers or our internal customers and say, hey, we've got a fantastic tool that works, rather than saying, we think this will work, but if it gets annoying, let us know. So we really spent a lot of effort and time up front to make sure that we got it all right and it would work. We rolled it out. And then the trust just came from using it. People reviewing cases, monitoring their assets, start building it into their habits and routine. And that trust slowly builds. And kind of like ironically, those areas that had the most cases started to build trust in it quicker because they saw those opportunities and benefits coming through more often. The trouble we've seen with some areas is they might get one case every week or two because they've only got a couple of assets onboarded, in which case you're kind of losing interest in between. Whereas those that are getting several a week keep their finger on the pulse and really get to see the demonstration of Senseye firsthand. So that's been a really important part of our rollout and really successful. And the other one is just around our digital transformation team. So we've actually, a lot of our teams come from internal within the business. So that brings some credibility, some relationships, and some experience in previous roles. So when we say something works and are advocating for it, it just comes with that extra layer of credibility to kind of get us on the front foot with some of these customers. But all in all, building that trust has probably been a little bit easier than expected, but likely because of the work we did up front. So we didn't have to kind of explain many problems because they didn't crop up because we'd solved it in the pilots.
Yeah, and that's really interesting as well, because I guess sometimes there's a keenness, and maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing, an enthusiasm to start big and go big as soon as possible. But yeah, what you're saying is it's use the pilot as a learning curve, pick up the learnings, introduce Senseye to the teams, and then see hopefully some early successes and cases and go from there and just build the momentum. Maybe that's another good word. I don't want to put words into your mouth, of course, but momentum's often comes up in my conversations as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use momentum at this stage, but the building up was really, really important. And we were very well supported from our management team here. Very early on, we identified the pilot as important. We identified that getting our data foundations important, and we identified some of the automation things that we wanted to achieve as important. But that meant effort up front to deliver quickly later on. And when we had that real robust support from our management team saying, yes, we back you to do that because we know it'll be worth it in the long run. And the prime example was the reason earlier on I said we started in anger at Christmas is we had been playing around and deploying up until probably for about 6 months before Christmas, and it wasn't working. And we actually stopped, deleted everything, reassessed our philosophy, and reloaded everything in March. So we effectively stopped for 3 months post-Christmas, deleted all, started again, and have never looked back. It's been really, really fantastic. So that's an example of how we've built into it. We've gone in stages, we've learnt, and we've had that support from our business to stop and fix it when we found an issue, not always looking for the fastest, biggest deployment. It was let's get it right for the long-term success.
And that's fascinating as well. I mean, that's such a brave decision because, like I said, a lot of people would just sort of try and continue. It'll improve if we keep going and keep going. It'll improve. But you just decided to stop, scrap it, and almost start from scratch. And you're seeing the rewards now as well, which is just fantastic to hear.
Yeah, it wasn't a comfortable decision to make, but looking back, it's totally the right decision to make. So would make it again any day.
And I mean, look where we are today. You mentioned multiple successes. With 300 assets. You said so. Amazing success. The one we're focusing on today actually it mentions 12 hours of avoided downtime, which we know, especially in your industry, is very significant for a number of reasons. I mean, maybe you could sort of outline that a bit, Stu, first of all, and then maybe we could quantify the actual financial impact of that. What does that mean in actual, maybe not specific hard numbers, but the financial impact generally?
Yeah, well, on the use case itself, 12 hours is significant for us. That's half a day's operation, especially on a plant that's close to bottleneck. That's a really, really good win. But it was an absolute fantastic case where the case was generated in the morning, and the engineer of that plant went out to investigate the gearbox in question. And you walk out there with some preconceived sort of ideas, right? You walk out thinking, it's going to be a loose coupling, or it's going to be motor cowling issues or something like that. So they've gone out and they've rattled the cowling, they've looked at the coupling, they've looked for backlash in the gearbox, and haven't actually found anything. But what kind of comes back to that trust piece is this engineer trusts Senseye. He knows that if Senseye says there's a problem to find. And he proceeded to kind of climb all over this motor roll gearbox assembly, and right down to the depths of it, where he found the mounting bolts of the gearbox to be loose, 3 out of 4 of them. And if we didn't have that trust, you'd give up and say, it must be a false case from Senseye. The coupling's fine and the motor's fine. But having that trust and the drive to keep looking until we find the root cause has led us to tighten up 3 bolts and lead to a 12-hour downtime avoided, which 12 hours in any industry, in any plant is fantastic. And it's not just the downtime avoided, it's the fact that if those bolts had failed and we had that catastrophic failure, you'd also lose the roll, the gearbox and the motor. So it's time, and it's that asset cost replacement as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of... sorry.
No. You go, Stu. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, but in terms of trying to quantify 12 hours, the important thing to remember is we want a benchmark and comparable KPI for measuring the performance of Senseye. And the complication you get is when you try and convert a KPI of hours to a financial one, because your financial value or your value of an hour varies so much. It could vary by plant. It could vary by the market. Like steel is a commodity product. So at the moment, we're quite low in the cycle. Steel's not worth much. And other times of the cycle, steel can be worth an absolute fortune. So depending on where you are in the cycle, an hour can be worth quite a bit different. So yeah, an hour today is not what an hour in a year or a month is. So it's you've got to be careful trying to compare these sort of benefits on dollar values, because you're not really comparing like for like at times. Hence why we primarily look for hours. And it's not just hours either, right? If you've got yield improvements that come from Senseye, you could be talking tons. We could be talking some defects or downgrade, which is a quality saving. So there's a number of different KPIs that can be used to measure the benefits of Senseye. But to give you a bit of a steer on where that value could sort of sit, well, if you're a high idle plant, not fully utilized, 12 hours of downtime might not be worth anything, because you've got that spare capacity to make up the lost opportunity. But if you are a bottleneck plant, 12 hours of downtime, it's in the tens of thousands in terms of opportunity. So Senseye really does, at the end of the day, provide significant benefits across multiple KPIs within a business.
Yeah, and you perfectly articulated, Stu, what we talk about internally a lot, or with other customers as well, because it is easy to focus on that downtime metric as the metric, but you've just explained very well why there's so many other benefits that maybe people wouldn't even have thought of, right? But were those other KPIs, were those identified sort of early on, when you're just starting to implement the technology, or did they become obvious, just become obvious as the rollout began and more assets were onboarded?
As a business, we live and breathe those sort of KPIs: downtime avoided, quality loss, yield, defects. That's kind of our bread and butter. So they're always front of mind. But for simplicity, Senseye was initially just justified on downtime avoided or hours, because that's such a big piece of the pie anyway, that if we nail that, we've more than justified the investment in digital transformation in Senseye. But absolutely, those other aspects have always been part of our mind. And as we start to get closer to that successful deployment of what we kind of 3,000 to 5,000 assets targeting downtime, then we can look to say, all right, now how can we target quality loss? How can we target yield improvements? And they're kind of like add-ons, and as we progress to further leverage what Senseye is providing us.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to say sort of further leverage as well, because what I liked about this success case as well, you mentioned it was all around the loose base and bolts, so it's like it's spotted quite, or potentially spotted like a hidden maintenance issues. I mean, is there other sort of examples of that from Senseye generally, not with this case, but other cases as well, where it's spotted unexpected maintenance issues which you may not have known about, right?
Yeah, well, across BlueScope, we share all these success cases, and I'm aware that one of the other sites had a cracked motor base, which they found. Once again, so hard to find because a crack can be hairline, but enough to create vibration and misalignment. So those are the sort of things that we've definitely seen it elsewhere across BlueScope. But where it really helps is we put routine PMs in place, right? So we might send someone out to inspect it once a month, but human nature is you go out there every month, nothing changes. You look at the easy stuff, you give it a wiggle, and you leave because there's nothing that's changed since last month. And as you kind of get a bit complacent with the same thing every month, you become less and less likely to look at the little details, to get down into the awkward place to access the bolts on the gearbox to check them. So what Senseye is doing is it's providing the extra line of defense to help us catch those minor details if and when they arise.
Yeah, actually, extra line of defense is an interesting one. So I always bring it back to another customer I interviewed a few years ago who described Senseye as like a tool in his toolbox. So it's thinking along the same lines, I feel. Different analogies, but along the same sort of line.
Yeah, it's absolutely a tool. It's a tool to improve the performance and management of our assets. And it's going to take more trust, more evidence, more rollout to start really ripping out our routine maintenance inspections and putting full faith in Senseye. But that's got to be the long-term goal, right? The long-term opportunity. And I think that'll be an incremental progress as we roll out, get more cases, get more trust, make sure that we've got our configuration right, because if you don't configure Senseye right, it won't pick up the minor details, in which case Senseye's not working and you've got rid of your PMs, you're not set up for success. So if we make sure we get that configuration right as well, trust it, prove it, then we can keep ripping out some of those PMs and remove it from a last line of defense to your primary tool of choice.
And just to step back a bit, because you mentioned before about, you share the successes across, other BlueScope sites, which, is fantastic. So how has that sort of knowledge sharing helped with, your rollout personally? Because obviously it's from both sides as well, but, how has that collaboration and knowledge sharing helped you?
It's been so great to be 6 to 12 months behind them because you learn what has and hasn't worked. We can pick up the phone and call other people in the business when we have questions and after it advice. But it's also allowed us to tailor our deployment specific to us in New Zealand. And one of the things we identified really early on was that there's quite a bit of subject matter expert knowledge needed to learn how to use Senseye, but then know exactly what sort of information you have for your assets to then configure Senseye. So we had hypothesized that early on, but seeing the rollout through other areas of the business, we then started to realize that kind of hypothesis is right, and subject matter expert resource was going to be the toughest challenge to everything we did rolling out. So what we based a lot of our kind of coming back to that effort up front to go fast later on. We actually put a lot of time in up front to prioritize automation and standardization of Senseye configuration. So we actually built our own tool to leverage a lot of Senseye's API capabilities, so we could automatically integrate. We could standardize the configuration of Senseye. We could effectively turn it into a single-click solution that utilize common asset configuration strategies to take that subject matter expert knowledge away from our people having to learn Senseye, and then just leverage what they know about their plants. So that they would, for an example, we have pre-developed a template for what an electric motor should have. An electric motor should have a run signal, probably should have temperature, probably should have speed and vibration, and potentially a load. And from that information, we can then use that to configure with whatever data they have that matches that template. We can pre-configure everything in Senseye using standard governance, naming conventions, all your configuration groups, eliminating that Senseye knowledge, ensuring that what we're deploying is accurate, repeatable, and trustworthy. So that was one of the big learnings we had from following the Australian business. Is we had a theory, we saw the need for that, and put a lot of time and effort then into building our automated solution, which is now allowing us to accelerate quite quickly, given the effort we put on up front.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, actually. It sort of set the groundwork for scale, which looks like to be the next sort of frontier for you guys, scale across more assets, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've built our automation, we've got our data foundations in place, we've proven the pilot, we've got our subject matter experts on board. Let's go. And that's our goal for this financial year, is to prioritize pretty much nothing other than Senseye rollout.
And what we haven't spoken about actually is sort of a key aspect of the app, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, is the generative AI capabilities, the co-pilot capabilities. I just wanted to get a feel from you, Stewart, at this stage. I guess how are your colleagues sort of responding to the co-pilot? Are they, how are they using it to sort of inform? I know this success case in particular gave some indication and hopefully assisted with the investigation of the issue. But maybe you could give a bit more detail around that.
Yeah, the co-pilot capability is still pretty new for us, because the thing with co-pilot is it learns from what we're putting in the system, right? And as we've only got 300 assets in there, we haven't had a huge amount of cases. We haven't put a lot of feedback in, given not a huge amount of cases. So the Senseye Copilot feedback at this stage is relatively light, just because it hasn't got that to build on. But we do expect it to become quite informative as we provide more feedback, because it all makes sense, right? With generative AI, we know what it can do. And if we are giving it feedback and we see a similar case in 12 months' time, we'd totally expect Copilot to say, hey, we saw this 12 months ago, here's what you decided then. So I think we're aligned with the vision and the opportunity that Copilot's going to bring. And we're going to see that as we give it more time, build the cases, get our documentation into Senseye so that it's starting to build up that knowledge base to provide more and more of that valuable feedback from.
Yeah, and actually, if we take a little step back from that as well, because another maybe almost not forgotten functionality related to Gen AI in Senseye, but it's in the case itself where there's graphs and things like that which people can interpret, but actually it's the summaries of what's happening, what potentially could do. Rather than trying to interpret and look at graphs, you can now just say, oh, there's a snapshot of what's happening. Maybe comparing it to different cases and things like that. So I see that as a sort of a big plus as well, separate to the co-pilot, I guess, in that respect.
Yeah, well, Senseye's there to make our lives easy, right? And interpreting a vibration or a temperature or pressure trend, that's what a lot of our people have done for the last, since 1965, right? They've done it for decades. So that's nothing new to us. But what's fantastic is Senseye now tells us exactly where to look and why. So you're not having to trawl through the last 24 hours of data. You come in the morning and it's highlighted a 1 hour window on a case saying, here's a problem, have a look at it. So it's giving us that push in the right direction, far more streamlined and making us be more efficient with our time, instead of looking at hours worth of trends that likely have nothing in them. And then when we do have something in them, you've got to be alert enough to pick it up, whereas Senseye's pointing us straight to where the opportunity is.
Yeah, and the way I sort of explain it as well is even someone like me can interpret some of that stuff, right? So it makes it easy for everyday people like me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so it's such powerful functionality. So yeah, I guess as we come towards the end, Stu, and we've covered so much, it's been really interesting to learn about your story at BlueScope New Zealand. And you've sort of touched upon this question already, but maybe to, sort of bring it together and summarise sort of what does the future look like with Senseye and the deployment, and what are you looking to focus on next regarding that?
Yeah, so for us, the focus at the moment is now to roll it out. So we've got 300 assets, targeting 3,500 assets. So that's about engaging with our teams, training our people, identifying the priorities within these assets that we're looking to target as a rollout, deploy it, and monitor it. So that's our focus. My team's going to be out working with the plants to make this happen, and that's literally almost our primary focus for the next 12 months, working on what's critical and what's most suitable for Senseye. And then it's sit back and kind of enjoy it, right? It's tweak it, it's refine it, it brings some more of those more complex type problems in. So I kind of alluded to some of the quality opportunities and the likes, where that's not quite, it's not necessarily as black and white as the motor vibrating. It could be a combination of process parameters that drift, which leads to a quality defect. So as we build more experience and get the low-hanging fruit, then we keep pushing into that more complex but equally beneficial area.
And I guess also maybe a word towards the collaboration with the maybe originally the Senseye team. I'm trying to think of the timeline you gave, but maybe with the Siemens team. How has that sort of collaboration helped with the sort of implementation and ongoing support?
Yeah, the support all the way through has been super forthcoming. So early on, when we were trying to kind of build the business case to support it, yes, we could say, here's what was done in our pilot in Australia. But the Senseye team at the time were really supportive to help continue to build that, shape it, and scope it for New Zealand. And then throughout the implementation, the team's been fantastic. And like I said, we've done something quite unique in terms of our automation capabilities. And I like to think we've got a pretty good relationship with the back-end team at Senseye, because we've asked them curly questions. We've requested some features that a lot of, or possibly no one's ever asked for. So we've really pushed the boundary of that GraphQL capability. But the support and openness from the Senseye team to take our feedback on board, implement it, open doors so we can pursue our vision, it has been massive. And then the ongoing support and expert knowledge on the use of the tool has really been helpful lately. So how do we continue to drive down nuisance cases? How can we tune the algorithm to be more accurate and responsive? That intricate knowledge that the Senseye team have of their tool is invaluable for us to rapidly develop and continue to improve, because if we're going to learn the hard way, it's all going to take time, right? But we literally meet with the team weekly to continue to refine and tweak and develop the tool.
No, that's really fantastic to hear. And what I would say on the product side is that we do, I'll speak on behalf of the product team, but genuinely do speak to customers regularly, in small sessions, give background on, what's coming up in the roadmap in terms of new functionality and things, and not, like you said, offer customers like yourself the opportunity to actually provide feedback and implement it into the product as well, importantly. So that does happen. So I'll give a shout out to those guys. They do a fantastic job. as well as the rest of the team, I should say, as well. But yeah, no, for today, Stu, I think we've come to the end, but it's been really interesting learning about your success and continued success. I could only hope the trajectory seems to be very much scaling up and seeing more success. So I do wish you all the best with that and look forward to hearing all about it as well. Maybe we could do another one of these to discuss it. Who knows? But it's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you, Niall. I think it's a great opportunity, right, to share our story with other people. But yeah, to cycle back in a year or so when we've got several thousand assets, it'll be a great story to tell and a real demonstration of what Senseye at scale can look like, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's on the record now, so I can hold you to it. No, fantastic. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for your time, Stu. And I'd like to thank everyone, wherever you are, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Niall.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.